Hello. A few months ago, when this year's Booker Prize long list was announced, I tried reading Study for Obedience by Sarah Bernstein, and I didn't get very far because I found the process of reading it so arduous, and I made a video talking about this. Now, since then, there have been a number of comments on that from some readers who agreed with me, and some readers who felt really positively and strongly about this novel and encouraged me to try reading it again. And it has also now won the Giller Prize in Canada, and there have been lots of positive reviews, both in print and on YouTube, including from some members of my online book club, like Andrew and Selena and Gretchen, who has a booktube channel called Made You Book. I love a booktube channel that has a good pun in the title. She made a wonderful review video about this book, which I'll link in the description below. But I thought it would be interesting to try rereading it for myself and see if I feel differently about it now, because I happen to have a free afternoon and it's very rainy and stormy outside, so it seems like the perfect time to just stay in and read and to try to read this book in one big gulp, because it's not a very long novel. And one thing that Gretchen noted in her review is that she read it all in one go, and she thought this really benefited the reading process of it, whereas I was like reading it in a staggered fashion over a number of days. So I'm going to try to do that now, and then I'll record my thoughts about it. So I'm looking forward to have a leisurely afternoon of reading this while having a cup of tea, and I've got a little honey cake here to enjoy while reading this book. And then I'll record my new reaction to it, and we'll see if it's changed or it might be the same. I'm now at the point in this book where I'd previously abandoned it at the end of chapter 2, only on page 50, and I'm heartened to find that I'm getting along better with it than I did previously. And I think that's partly because I've gone into this with different expectations, not expecting to get the kind of story and narrative that I typically would in a novel, or what I necessarily even enjoy from reading novels. But this is a character and a narrative style that is almost Baroque in its structure, and that it purposefully withholds or obscures information so that it is quite cryptic, and in that way is initially very frustrating. And so because I went into this completely blind before, not knowing that this is how the story would go, I found it really difficult to get very far in it, but now I'm so compelled by this character who is so aware of her own meekness and position in the world, that she knows she's not a strong and powerful person like other people who can succeed and progress in the world. So she has to adopt a different strategy for existing in the world, and sometimes that involves having purposeful ignorance. Sometimes that involves accepting blame and persecution for things which she knows is unjust. But this is just kind of the way of the world that she knows, both from her ancestry. There's references to her Jewishness and her people in the past who have been persecuted and killed and driven out of their land, but also within her family life as the youngest member of this family, and who has been the meekest youngest child. And so the oldest son, who is the kind of shining boy of the family, it has taken a much more prominent position, and she has taken the subservient role to that. And it's the question of how much do we believe that she believes in this position that she's taken, and how much agency does she really have within it. And that is making me very intrigued to continue on with this, even though I know it probably won't give me any full answers about this, but it's given me a point of view that I can appreciate a lot more. So I do want to continue on with this, and I'm intrigued to see if I still continue to find it as interesting as I am at the moment. So it is the next morning. I wasn't able to finish reading this book like I ideally wanted to in a single afternoon. Some work emails came in and I had to go to an event that evening. I am halfway through the novel now, and she is a character that lives so much inside her head, and it feels like she is someone who has been stuck by herself in a cabin for months or years at a time, with things revolving around in her head, so much so that there's a real distance in logic between what she understands and her actions that she displays and how that might be interpreted by people around her. And that is partly because this is actually the case that she has moved to a remote location where she doesn't speak the language, and her brother has left, and so now she's alone in this house and just wandering around in nature. And so she is like entirely on her own, but when she's recalling memories of the past, there's also this sense of distance between her and other people. And so it does feel this kind of like claustrophobic sense of her having come to her own conclusions about certain things, which are kind of detached from reality, but at the same time it does feel rooted in this sense of persecution, which is both personal and based on history, and also how she has developed this strange personality in which she internalizes everything and accepts that she is not a good person, even though she outwardly tries to be helpful and towards other people. But then you sort of question, like, if you got the point of view of any other characters, like, would that be the case? Would she actually be quite sinister? And so it's really interesting, this tension between this highly internalized view we're getting and also imagining what she must be like from the outside and what her actions might be resulting in, which we aren't seeing because we are so much in her head in how she is justifying things. So yeah, I'm intrigued to see how this carries out, and I'm going to try to finish reading this before I start work. I think I overestimated my ability to read even a relatively short book in such a compressed space of time, because yes, I did read this up until I had to start working, but also in between work, throughout my lunch hour, and into the early evening. It may surprise you to learn I'm actually quite a slow reader, but I have now finished reading this novel. Was it worth it? Yes. I admit it, I was wrong. I do think this is a great novel and it has a special power to it. And I'm not just saying that because it's been getting good reviews and it's been being nominated for and winning book prizes, or even because it makes a good reading vlog. Like, twist, I actually like the book. No, it has a resonance with me, and it's had an effect on me, and I think I'm going to continue to contemplate the meaning of this book. And I can't say it was an enjoyable experience. It was often frustrating. I'm sure there are lots of parts of it that I still don't understand, but it's had an effect on me, and I really appreciate the uniqueness of what she is doing in this book, because no, there's not much story to it, but there is this underlying violence. It's not an overt sense of violence, but there's this tension and something sinister simmering underneath what is going on in the action of this town. And I think it's playing upon these suspicions and fears which lead to people being ostracized within communities, especially of people who come from the outside and who are different from people within certain communities. We follow her and her experiences with these villagers, and who seem to be overreacting to her just because she spreads some decorative twigs around the town. In the scenes in the book, it's amplified almost to an absurd level that the community overreacts to her presence being there as a newbie when some slightly bad things start occurring natural bad things start occurring in both the community, and her brother gets ill, and they overreact to her in this ridiculous way, which I think is only highlighting the absurdity of how we make these artificial divisions based on fear and superstition. And there are basically overt references to the Holocaust and the continuing effects of that, but it could apply to so many different communities and countries and situations which are still going on in the world now, of large-scale conflicts that are occurring, based on ethnicity and people who believe that they are entitled to belong in a certain place rather than other people. And the story really emphasizes that, and so it has this larger, applicable, universal meaning which will continue to still resonate, but also there's a real personal meaning to this story in following her journey of trying to understand her situation as someone who has little power. And it considers the repercussions of this. And it made me personally reflect myself on my own situation and think, in what ways have I minimized myself in order to fit in order to get by and have a easy life? In what ways is this a survivalist instinct which is just naturally coming out? And in what ways am I being complicit with the horrors that are unfolding around me, both immediately around me and in the larger world? There's one section where she states, "Every single one of us on this ruined earth exhibited a perfect obedience to our local forces of gravity, daily choosing the path of least resistance, which, while entirely understandably human, was at the same time the most barbaric, the most abominable course of action. So listen, I am not blameless. I played my part." And it also made me wonder, in what ways am I like the brother in this story who assimilates himself and goes under a process of like self-reinvention in order to fit in with his environment and in order to succeed, but in doing so loses essential elements of himself? In what ways have I done that over the course of my life? But also, it's so interesting how this considers what power, what subversive and hidden power is there available when you're in a disadvantaged position within these kinds of situations. At another point, she writes, "It seemed to me that my obedience had itself taken a kind of mysterious power, and if I had been granted this power by some grace against my wishes, must I not then make use of it in some way?" And so I think she does find ways to make herself known within this community, but that also makes her a target and makes her the center of their attention, because she is distinct and foreign, both in her looks and in speaking a different language from the general township. Just talking through all of these things and my reaction to this book aloud makes me realize how there is so much more to this novel than what first meets the eye. And I'm really glad that I've returned to it. I'm really grateful for everyone who's encouraged me to do so, because I think it is one of those books that it does require special attention and dedication and concentration. And I fully realize that not everyone will want to give it that amount of time or have that kind of reading experience. So other people who haven't enjoyed trying to read this book, I don't blame you for giving up on it. But if you do decide to go back to it, hopefully, like me, you'll be converted to it. I'm a Sarah Bernstein convert, I admit it. So yes, I'm glad I went back to this. I'd love to know now what you think of this book. If you have tried to read it, if you did enjoy reading it, what other things about this book that I missed do I need to consider? Please let me know about that in the comments below. Or if you're interested in reading this book now, if you want to give it a try, please let me know. And once you do, please come back and let me know in the comments what you thought of it. But thank you for joining me on this journey of re-experiencing this book. And I will speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.